Welcome to day 3 of our daily Bible devotions. Let's look again at the premise 1 of the moral argument. If objective moral values and duties are objectively real, then God exists. That's our premise 1. We have already defined what objective is as opposed to objective. We have defined moral values and duties, and we've established the distinction between the two. Now, let us look at why it is commonly thought that this realm of moral values and duties depend on God or the concept of God for its existence. If moral values and duties exist objectively and not subjectively, why does it need to depend on God for its existence? Why should we assume that the claim that if moral values are objectively real, then God exists? What makes us think that? There is a question here that you need to watch out for. How can we prove that moral facts are real? If they are objective, if morality is objective, there are moral facts. But how can we prove that moral facts are real? First and foremost, we have to watch out for the question about proof. In one important sense, it is not possible to prove that moral facts are objectively real. Wow, why do we go on about this? Does that in any way weaken the moral argument? No, it does not. Because as many philosophers have noted, there are many other things that is rational or reasonable to believe, and yet we cannot prove them. Think about this. Our use of the laws of logic and mathematics is one good example. Remember when we were talking about good and bad science, there was this debate between the philosopher and the chemist. And then the chemist asked about the things that science cannot account for. The philosopher brought about some of the things, and one of them are math and logic. Math and logic, they work. We just understand them and use them. We cannot prove them. Well, there's proving in mathematics, but mathematicians know that. Do you know how to prove some mathematical equations that you use? You don't know how to prove them. Well, if you do, that's good for you. But many of us do not know how to do proving in math, and yet we still use them. Why? Because they work. Try to use logic, for example. A logic is being used by mathematics. Logic is being used by science and the scientific method. But what do we use to prove that logic is real? To prove that logic works? Well, logic just works. If we use logic to prove logic, that would be circular argument. We will be arguing in a circle. There are things that just works and you just use them. And many things that we believe because that's how they are, even though we can't prove them. So not being able to prove something does not mean that it's weak. The argument is weak. There are things that you can't always prove, but it's rational to believe in them. And in a sense, it appeals to the self-evident nature of things. One of them is logic, another is morality, another is ethics. We will go into that later. Any proof you succeed in producing will be weaker than the self-evident nature of morality and even of logic. It's self-evident. Your existence, our existence, it's self-evident. Someone taunted me weeks ago. We were doing a debate, and then someone taunted me, how do you prove that you exist? How do you prove that you exist? It's self-evident. You just exist. Rene Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I exist. But if you will really twist the mind, if you know the movies Matrix, Inception, sometimes it's difficult to know the realm of what is real and what is not real. And if you will be so tricky and always be on the lookout for proof, it will just twist your mind and you will never really know. But there are things that are self-evident, and one of them is morality. Anyone who doesn't believe in the reality or in the factuality of morality, you don't need to argue them because most likely they just need help. It's easy to say that morality is subjective, it's based on opinion, when you're not the one on the receiving end of hurt and pain. If, for example, someone will tell me that morality is subjective, then I will steal the property of that person. And maybe I can kill that person. What is he to complain about? It's subjective, right? If I believe it's right to kill and to steal from him, then what right does he have to say that I am wrong? But he is right to say that I am wrong because morality is beyond us. It's beyond our opinion. It is objective. Its nature is self-evident. If there is this realm of morality, and we all know this to be true, why do we take the extra step of saying that we need God to account for it? Okay, let's establish morality is objective. There are moral facts. Okay, yeah, but why do we need to assume that there is a God? Why do we need God to explain for that morality? Because you cannot account for moral values and duties using material processes, yung material principles, using science. Science cannot account for morality. Here's an illustration from Ludwig Wittgenstein. He says, when we say that something is either right or wrong, we make a judgment of value that is over and above what we are describing. Now, what he's trying to say is that if two people here are arguing what is right and what's wrong, what you need is an arbiter. The arbiter will impose the standard. Okay? The arbiter and the standard, it exists outside these two. It is external. It is independent of these two. Because if it's just them, it's just, you know what they say when it's your word against mine. The two of them will just keep on arguing forever and they will never know. It has to be from the outside the system. It cannot be within them. It could be above. Science describes nature. Science describes the system. Okay? But morality is outside the system. It is external, imposed upon the system. Values are not simply given even in complete description of events. For example, think about this. This is an illustration from Wittgenstein. Suppose that there are two columns, okay? And then, on one hand, one column, you can offer an exhaustive description of murder. Here, murder is described. On the other column, you offer a complete description of the falling of a stone. Two scientific things, the murder of a person and the falling of a stone. From a scientific standpoint, both descriptions, this column and another column, both descriptions would be equivalent. In science, both of them can be explained. Nothing in the description of the murder would entail the conclusion that the murder ought not to have happened. Okay? To say whether or not the murder ought to have happened is to make an additional value judgment to our description of the events. This is what we're saying weeks before, that science is descriptive, it's not prescriptive. And John Lennox, you know John Lennox already. Now, he said, science can tell you that if you add strychnine, a chemical, to someone's drink, it will kill her. Science can explain that. The chemical in the drink of another person will kill that person. But science cannot tell you whether or not you ought to put that chemical into your grandmother's tea in order to get your hands on her property. Sure, it is logical. You want her property, you want her to die, therefore add that poison, add that chemical into her drink, then she dies. Science can explain all those processes. Science can describe that. But science will tell you, oh no, you shouldn't do that. Science is merely descriptive. It's not prescriptive. Now, we're talking about values here that is existent outside of the system, imposed upon the system. Where is that coming from? Is that coming from us? It's outside the system, imposed upon us to make a standard. That's how ethics and morality works. We will continue this tomorrow.